Hello, my name is WeldonRoper, and welcome to my home and my informative presentation on listening that is based on the textbook Communicating at Work by Alder, Elmhorst, and Lucas. Here I have with me is my daughter Katie, and online I have Amy Nunn. There are 3 things we can do to help build our listening skills. The first one is change our attitude about listening. Second one, remove things that get in the way of listening. And 3, practice a few things that we can do to increase our effective listening. So where do we begin? Is it not at the beginning? No, we start before the conversation starts. We start before we communicate. Why is listening important? Hey, if I'm the boss, shouldn't everybody just listen to me? These are a few things that you need to think about before you go into a communication. Studies support that listening is the most important communication skill a person can have. Also, listening enhances your success in your career, productivity, moving up the ladder, and team effectiveness. 1,000 executives were asked and agree that listening is the #1 skill for the ideal manager. The next thing we can do before the communication starts is check our attitude, our faulty assumptions about listening. First of all, it is not the sender's responsibility. If a person is speaking without someone to hear, then communication is not taking place. They're just uttering words. Listening is not just absorbing the speaker's thoughts. Effective listening involves asking questions that check for understanding. The person talking does not have the advantage. Bill Exton gives us some good advice. For every minute a salesperson spends listening, he or she will save 4 minutes overcoming objections. And the final thing, listening is not a natural talent. It takes work. Evidence suggests that many of us think we're better listeners than we actually are. So now that we've cleaned out our communication mind by removing the assumptions and changing our attitude on the importance of listening, let's look at those barriers we can face while we communicate. We have 2 basic barriers when we take part in communication. Physical or environmental and psychological barriers. Environmental barriers are things like background noise, uncomfortable chairs, phone interruptions, temperature of the room. Psychological barriers are things that are in our own minds that can hinder our listening abilities, like our minds being preoccupied by personal events and things going on in our lives. We can also have message overload, where through social media, texting, and our smartphones, we can have too much information in our mind that will hinder us from actually listening to the person. The next thing is egocentrism. This is a part of our personality where we think that we might be better than this person that we're talking to, that our ideas are better than this person. That also can bring barriers in front of you and a person communicating to you. And the next is similar, but it's ethnocentrism, where you use your cultural barriers, speech, color, these different things that will put up barriers that will reduce your ability to listen to the person you're talking with, communicating with. And then the last one is fear. This is the fear of appearing ignorant if you were to ask questions to check for understanding. This fear must not stop you from asking questions so that you can better understand the message that person is giving you. Now that we have covered these things, the things we can do before the conversation to help our listening, by cutting out environmental distractions, changing our attitude on listening, we can move to things that we do while we listen. During the conversation, we must listen with the intent of understanding. This process is called active listening. It involves some discipline and practice by the listener. While listening, you need to withhold your judgment about the speaker's message and the speaker. Next, we want to seek to listen more than we talk or interrupt. At the appropriate time, ask questions and paraphrase to verify that you understand. Also, we need to keep in mind while we communicate with this person that we need to keep in mind of their verbal cues that they are communicating to us also, like vocal tones, expressions, and gestures. And when possible, take notes. This shows the speaker that you are listening and that you're serious about the conversation, and in the future you can refer to those notes. Once you can say that you understand the message, then you can evaluate the message. Evaluate the evidence that is given by the speaker. Ask questions like, is the evidence true? Is there enough evidence? And are there exceptions to this evidence? Should they even be considered? When you ask those questions, check for emotional appeals. Check for emotions that may cause you to ignore logical decisions or maybe even good questions. So, bottom line, if we want to become a better communicator, we must become a better listener first. We can do this in 3 easy ways. Change our attitude, remove the barriers, and practice active listening. One of my favorite proverbs from the Bible is Proverbs 18:2, where it talks about the listener and the talker. Fools find no pleasure in understanding, but delight in airing their own opinions. Thank you for your time.